Sorry, so I didn't click on the record button. Okay. So Hare Krishna and welcome you all to the Bhagavadgita level 2 classes from ISKCON Mangaluru. So until yesterday we covered chapter 7, right? So we actually entered into Bhakti Yoga, right? From chapter 7 until 12. Yes, Bhakti Yoga. And then we saw that Lord Krishna actually introduced so many things to us, right? So, first thing is he started uh, the topic on stressing on the importance of listening, right? He said, Tat Shrunu, right? So, from there, from the 9 devotional services, right? So, one of the important devotional services to listen, right? And then he actually took us into so many things. He actually told us about his opulences, right? So wherein he said that so he is the source of both material and spiritual creation, right? And then how Maya actually works under him, right? And then how jivas are actually bound with the three moods of material nature, and then how we are conditioned, right? And then we actually saw the four kinds of pious people who can actually uh, get into the devotional service, and then four unpious um, kind of categories of people, so who will uh, not get into devotional service, right? And we even saw that the next thing which we saw in, right, out of many uh, births, right? So there will be a few uh, who will get a chance to do bhakti. And then even Lord says that he is not, he doesn't act, is he doesn't make himself visible to all, right? So he actually um, covers himself with the Maya, right? So with the Yoga Maya, so he is covered so that the non-believers, right? So they'll never be able to see, right? So the Lord mentioned that even, right? Wherein so there is a curtain, and then that is only allowed for the pure devotees, right? And then at the end, he said that uh, all are magnanimous, right? So all four categories of people are magnanimous, pious people, and then out of them, Gyanis are best because they don't have. Uh, so they too have, but so they have knowledge, right? And then he says that the one who remembers me all the time, right? So he is the best among all kinds of pious people, right? So which is nothing but bhaktas, okay? And then he says that one has to remember him all the time, right? So now the next chapter, so which we are actually going to discuss is attaining the supreme. Okay, so this is the chapter 8. Okay, so in this chapter, the Lord actually touch bases on multiple things. Okay, so wherein he says that now again in this chapter, unlike other chapters, right, Arjuna starts with the question. Okay, and because from last chapter he has some questions which um, Krishna will reveal, and then this is basically the remembrance of the Lord at the time of death. Okay, so how should be our mood? Okay, and then what will happen when we remember the Lord, right? And then the other thing is what happens if we actually don't remember the Lord, right, at the time of death, right? So we'll actually see all these things, and then um, what is pure devotional service, and then so comparing the glories between the material and spiritual world, right? And then we'll see the at the end we'll see the supremacy of devotion in attaining the supreme. Okay, so we'll try to cover half of the section today, right? So wherein we will see about the remembrance of the Lord, right? So that is a very painful thing, right? So basically, when anyone is leaving the body, right? So while leaving the body, so the body actually goes through a lot of pain. Okay, so in some section somewhere, Prabhupada has written, right? It will be like thousand scorpions actually biting. Okay, so the pain which you get in, right? So you'll be in that mode. Okay, and say one side you'll be having all your family members, right? And the close relatives, and right, so they'll be there, right? And then among them, right? So how we can actually get detached from all this material thing, and then how one actually uh, leaves the body by actually thinking of Lord Krishna. So that is important. Okay, how do we build that consciousness? Okay, so now from 8.1 to 8.4, Arjuna. So first thing is Arjuna's questions and then answers. Okay, so basically now Arjuna will have these questions. Okay, so from where did these questions come? Is from these two verses. Okay, because if you recollect, yesterday we saw that the towards the end of the chapter, right? So Jara Marana Moksha, right? So this was the thing which was mentioned in 7.29, right? And then so there were other things also, so wherein Lord Krishna actually touched, right? So he said that Adi Devam, okay, Bhutadi Devam, right? And then Adi Yagnam, right? And then Prana Kale. So all these keywords, right? So Adhyatman, so and Karma. So even Karma also. So now all these words were spoken, and then now actually Arjuna asks very important question. Okay, so that is very important, right? So most of them do not know what to actually do at the time when somebody has to leave or leave the body, or someone has got some stipulated time, right? So most of the thing is during the medical emergencies and all, so people say that doctors just give some time, right? And then they say that this is the time which you have got, right? At that time, so what uh, the consciousness should be, right? So most of them don't know. So even if somebody asks also, they are clueless. Okay, but if you read Bhagavad Gita and then we practice day in and day out, right? So at that time, so we need not fumble, right? And our things should be clear. Even the process is very simple for us. Okay, so we'll just see through what the discussion is between Arjuna and Krishna. Okay, so the first verse, Arjuna asks, Arjuna vacha, kim tad brahma, kim adhyatmam, kim karma पुरुषोत्तम आदिभूतं च किं प्रोक्तम Adidevam kim uchyate. So he's asking, so what is Brahma, what is Adhyatma, right? So all those links which we saw, right? So he's basically asking all those questions now. So in we saw that highlighted part, right? So Arjuna is asking now, oh my Lord, oh Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is self? What are putative activities? What is material manifestation? Right? So Adhyatmam is self. Okay. And then he is asking Adhibhutam, the material manifestation, right? Adi Devam, the demigods, right? So he's asking, what is material manifestation and what are the demigods? Please explain to me. Right. So now he is asking a wide range of questions. Okay. And then um, after this first two verses, right, the Lord actually will explain about karma, right? So the purative activities in devotional service and the yoga principles, right? And then the absolute truths. We know that there are three phases, right? Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan, right? So, and he even asks about Atma. Okay. So basically, Atma in this particular reference, Prabhupada has written that Atma refers to body, mind, soul. Okay. And senses, correct. So these are the three things. Okay. So we'll see what is the next question he is asking. Yeah. आधियज्ञ कथं को अत्र देहे अस्मिन् मधुसूदन प्रयाणकाले च कथं न्यायो असि niyat niyatmabhi. So who is the Lord of sacrifice? So now he's asking, who is the Yajna Purusha? Okay, he's again confirming. Okay, so even the Lord mentioned in the chapter 5. So now he's asking, who is the Lord of sacrifice, right? And who does and how does he live in this body, oh Madhisudana? So, and how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? So he's asking, now he's slowly taking towards the death, right? So basically, here we all know that the Lord of sacrifice, right? So basically, in most of the sacrifice, right? So it is mentioned as either Indra or Vishnu. Okay, but Vishnu is the chief of all, um, right? And then he is the Adi Guru, right? So that's the reason whatever performance we do, right? So that yagna performance, right, uh, is for the Lord. Okay. So in this case, right, Arjuna is asking who is actually the yagna, right? And then how the Lord is residing within the body of the living entity. So which is nothing but the Lord, right? And then he's asking Prayana Kale. So Prayana Kale is during whenever we are actually living. Okay. So this is the time of death. So when we are actually living, right? The body. So he's very anxious and then he's asking, so what should be the position at the final moment, right? So and then at that time, so what would be the body and mind conditions, right? So what if um, somebody is not fixed in mind, right? So he's asking, so what should how should things go? How should actually one fix his mind? Okay. So in this in the next slide, we'll see that there is an king called Kulashekara. Okay. See, he says that, oh Lord, actually, I don't know what will be my situation. Okay. So when at the time of death, right, my um, this one, uh, my voice should be choked up with mucus, right? And then I don't know, so how my body functions would be, right? So everything would be helter skelter. So he says that it is better. And then I don't know how can I remember you, and then how can I chant at that time, right? So he says that it is better when if you can actually take me now when I am healthy, and then when I can actually concentrate on you properly, and then I can chant your glories, right? That's what he says here. Oh Lord Krishna, at this moment, let the royal swan of my mind enter the tangled stems of the lotus of your feet. How will it be possible for me to remember you at the time of death, when my throat will be choked up with mucus, bile, and air? So he says that it's very difficult, right? He says that, so rather you actually take me now only, so when I'm fit, right? And this is what so Adi Yajna is nothing but Vishnu. So Vishnu is the chief of all the devatas, and then Indra is the chief of administrative. Okay. So Prayana Kala is nothing but at the time of death. So this is the very crucial time. So whatever we do throughout the life, right, that will be tested. So that is the time when all the flashbacks run in our mind. Okay. So when one leaves the world, when is about to leave, right? At that time you get multiple things, and then so if you have done pious activities, and then so you have been in devotional service and all, right, so then you will get those glimpses only. But rather if you have done something um, impious, and then some crooked things, right, so you'll get into that, and then you'll get entangled, and then at that time actually the time is very short to actually repent. So indicates Arjuna to know the position of Krishna consciousness devotee at the death. So he's asking what would be the position. So we'll see through. So now Arjuna had posted so many questions, right? So the answers are this. They had asked what is Brahman, right? Which is Jiva, the indestructible living entity. So Adhyatma is nothing but controller of the body or the nature of Jiva. Karma is actions leading to material body. So it's nothing but what karma we do. So depending on that, we get the material body, right? And Adi Bhuta is material nature, right? Adi Deva is nothing but the Supreme Lord, universal form, which includes all demigods. So this will come in chapter 11. Adi Yajna is Paramatma. Okay. So where does Adi Yajna resides? In all our heart. So in this context, right? So when Arjuna asked, right, about Adi Yajna, so this was the thing. So he was asking about this. Okay. And then how do we remember Krishna at the time? Practice remember throughout the life. Okay. So it is not that we can remember Krishna all of a sudden. Okay. It's not possible. So looking at this, right? So people may feel that I'll enjoy my life all throughout the life. Okay. And then at the time of or I'll say when I'm aged, and then say I'm of no use, right? So I'll actually cut my throat, or I'll shoot myself, and then I'll chant Hare Krishna while chanting Hare Krishna, and then I'll shoot myself, or I'll chant and then I'll suicide. Those things will not work out, because Lord is not such a fool, right? So he knows. So we can't cheat him, right? So he's as a Paramatma. So you can cheat your spouse, you can cheat your children, you can cheat your near and dears, but we cannot cheat the Paramatma. Yeah. So he's always with us, either in good or bad. And then he actually is watching whatever we do in, right? And the other thing is the at the time of death, right? So that exam we will only have to write. Okay. So none of the family members are going to accompany you. So it is not like any uh, 10th standard board exam or anything, right? So even for your look at the material exams which we have in 10th class also, right? So what happens? So at the best, if our child is writing the exam, right? So we can go until the gate. That's it, right? Afterwards, the child goes in, and then it is the child who has to face the exam, right? So this is also the same thing. Whatever opulences you have, whatever money you have, whatever gold you have, whatever relatives you have, so nobody is going to accompany you. Simple thing, even when you go to an ICU, who accompanies you? No one. So none of the relatives will come in. So when take the example of Corona. So when Corona happened, what happened? So even the sons and daughters, they were allowed until the hospital only. After that, nobody knows. So you had to struggle. So though people had a lot of bank balances, right? So People were filthy rich, but even the condition was so degraded that their own sons and daughters were not taking the dead body also, right? So that is how the life is. Yeah. So I'm not exaggerating anything, but yes, these are some truths which we should know in. Yeah. So now actually the Lord answers, right? So the Supreme Lord said that the indestructible, transcendental living entity is Brahman and his eternal nature is called the self, right? Actions pertaining to the development of these material bodies is called karma or punitive activities. We just saw the answers also, right? So in the last slide, so this is a little bit more detailed, right? So what is Brahman? Living entity and Lord. So both are Brahman, right? But Lord is Parabrahman. Uh, It's like same Anu and Vibhu, right? Qualitatively we are same, but not in quantity. And then difference between material consciousness and spiritual consciousness. So material consciousness is nothing but try to lord over, right? So the results into karma. So we actually move on from one species to the other. There are 84 lakh species, right? So and then we take different bodies depending upon what is our desire, right? And then the spiritual consciousness is to serve the supreme. So that's the thing. So while living entity is called marginal entity, this we discussed, right? So this is like we are on the beach road, one side is land, one side is water, right? So that's the reason. So one side is spirituality and the other side is materialistic life. So and then we keep on dangling here and there. So we are marginal. So that's the thing, right? So because the living entity sometimes identifies with matter and sometimes identifies with supreme nature. So that is nature. Then he is only a superior nature. Then he has only one spiritual body. So he actually, that's the reason we are marginal. So, and then if we actually take into devotional service, and then if we develop the superior quality, then we'll get the spiritual body. And then there is no problem of old age, death, disease. Yeah. Results of living entity identifying with matter. So what happens if we actually get ourselves entangled in matter, right? So there are 84 lakh species and then we'll transmigrate as per our karma, right? So maybe we'll start from an insect and then even in Bhagavatam it says that it gives the 84 lakh species split, saying 9 lakhs are like aquatics, then there are four-legged, there are two-legged. So that split is there. Yeah? What is Krishna consciousness viewpoint? Avoid such sacrifice that direct Krishna consciousness and go back to Godhead. Okay. So the living entity is an eternal individual, right? Supported by two references. So this is Mama Vamsha Jiva Loka. Okay. So these things are yet to come. Okay. So here the Lord actually says that the physical nature is known to be endlessly mutable. Okay. Adibhutam Sharo Bhava. Okay. So the universe is the cosmic form of the Supreme Lord, and I am that Lord represented as super swirl, right? Dwelling in the heart of every embodied being. Okay. So the Lord actually is actually taking the discussion further. Okay. So he actually says that the universal form of the Lord, which includes all demigods, right? So, like those of sun and moon, right? They are called Adi Deva, right? And then I, the Supreme Lord represent as the super soul in the heart of every embodied being as Adi Yajna. Okay, so that's what the Lord says in. Okay, here he says, right, Adi Yajna aham evatra deha dehe bhritam vara. So he says that I am the Adi Yajna, and then how am I residing as Paramatma, right? So in every body, right? So and then here also the same thing, right? The physical nature is called Adibhuta. So he's answering those questions, okay? And then and it is created at a certain point, and then it will get annihilated, right? So we know that there will be pralayas which will be happening, and then the annihilation takes place, okay? And then Adi Yajna we actually discussed in, right? So wherein so we actually discussed about the Paramatma, right? And Adi Devata is the universal form. Okay. So wherein these are the Virat Purusha. Basically, if you read Bhagavatam, right? So these details are being given. So wherein the Virat Purusha's legs are considered to be the lower planetary systems. Okay. And then his head is considered to be the upper, like the Satyalok, Tapalok and all those things, right? So, and then his feet are Bhuvarlok and Atalva, Patala and all those things, right? So those are at the lower, and then mid portion is our Bhuvarlok and those things. Okay, so that's the thing. Yeah. So this is what Adi Bhuta, right? Adi Devata. So this is universal form, right? And then basically for the neophytes, right? So are the new members, right? So who cannot approach the Supreme Lord as in manifestation as a super soul, right? So they actually contemplate on the Virat Purusha. So in that way they get connected. Okay. So this is Adi Yajna. So witness of all activities is nothing but Paramatma. Yeah. And Adi Bhuta is constantly changing. So anything which is material or which is born, right? So that is bound to die, right? So whichever has taken birth, right? So there will be a death. So even the richest of the richest on the earthly planet, right? If he has taken birth, right, he has to die, right? The super rich, so the world number one rich person, right, or the influential woman, whosoever it is, right? So everyone has to actually leave this body. So everyone goes into 6 phases. So you could be a business tycoon, you could earn crores of money. So you may have thousands or lakhs of crores in your deposit. But as you are born, you are bound to grow, you'll live for some time, you'll have some byproducts, then you'll get disease, dwindles at some time, and then death. So that formula is always there. So that is not going to change. Yeah. So now remembering Krishna at the time of death, right? So one attains whatever one remembers at the time of death, right? Krishna recommends Arjuna to undeviatingly meditate on him, did and then dedicate his activities to him and thus attain him. So the Lord Krishna says that. So to the question, so what should one do? So now Lord Krishna will actually share the details, and then he's saying that one has to remember me. eh? So we'll just go through the section. अंतकाले च मामेव स्मरन् मुक्त्वा कलेवरं यः प्रायति सामद्भावं यत्नास् यति नास्ति अत्र संशय. So this is what the Lord says, okay? Antakale. So Antakale is nothing but at the end of life, right? So you'll have to remember me, right? Smaran Mukteva Kalevaram. So when you're quitting this body, Kalevaram is nothing but the body, right? Yah Prayati Samadbhavam. So who actually thinks of me, right? So my nature so achieves the same, right? So translation is nothing but and whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone at once, attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. Okay. So the Lord is giving the assurance here, saying that whosoever is remembering him at the testing time, right? So he'll actually be taken care. And then so he'll actually go back to Godhead. But remembrance of Krishna is not possible for the impure soul. So if you have not practiced any devotional service, right, then it is very difficult. So live about at the time of death. So even when we are in pain, in agony, right? So possibly take the example of if we have been pushed into an operation theater. So do we remember Krishna at that time? Is the question, right? So that has to be cultivated over a period. So that will only come if we practice regularly, right? And then um, we should be actually totally dependent on him, right? So if we have that attitude, right? So then say we can actually come out of it, right? So basically, so when there is trauma and everything, right? So when you're almost alone, right? So at that time, if we are actually remembering something, right? So if we are indulged into some bank balance stuff and then say what will happen, this and that, so then that is a test case. So what will happen during when you're leaving everything and then you're going from this world? Yeah. So that's the reason. So how do we remember the Lord? Unless we chant, right? So if we are chanting all the time and then you're actually dovetailing everything. So whatever work you do, right? So you always remember Krishna, and then if you perform, right? So at the time, so that will come, that will become as an, uh, so it will come naturally. So you should not actually forcefully think of something and then say it will not come. So it has to come naturally only. Okay. And then for this, even so in actually, if you look in the Sishtastakam also, right? So which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said, right? So the mood, the way we should actually chant the mantra, right? So we should actually chant as Tarorapi Sahishnuna, right? So we should chant as tolerant as a tree, right? Trinadapi sunechena tarorapi sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadaharir, right? So we should actually be humble while chanting. So we should be humble like a grass, right? So what happens if somebody stamps on the grass? So the grass doesn't fight with him, right? Nor he doesn't do anything. So once that footstep is gone, after sometimes it will actually again come back, right? So we should be humbler, right? Even if you look at the tree, right? So the tree actually gives a lot of shelter, right? So it does, thankless job, right? So it never it doesn't have any expectation. So if we can actually chant in that way, right? And then so the living entities, they actually utilize the tree for everything, right? So they eat the fruits, they cut the branches, right? Even if somebody is going to cut the trunk also, the tree will not resist, right? So that humbleness we should get in. Yeah? So then we can actually do that. Yeah. And then this is a wonderful story. Do you know who these characters are? And then who is this person? Any guesses? Easy one. Or you can put in chat also. So if you feel that you don't want to speak, then you can even put it in chat. Come on, this is easy. So you all can answer though. Yeah, I think preach Mataji or Prabhuji, I don't know, but that's the correct identification. That's Yudhishthira Maharaj. These are Pandavas. Okay, so this is the Yaksha story, right? So you all might be knowing it, right? So when the Yaksha was asked, said that I'll ask question and then first you'll have to answer, then only I'll allow you to drink the water. So none of them obeyed, but Yudhishthira Maharaj was the one who answered all the questions of the Yaksha, right? So Yaksha actually asked this question, right? So what is the most astonishing thing, right? And then Yudhishthira Maharaj says, hundreds and thousands of living entities meet death at every moment. Okay. But a foolish living being nonetheless thinks himself deathless and does not prepare for death. Okay. This is the most wonderful thing. So he's asked, what is the most wonderful thing in the world? Okay, sorry. So for that, he says that everyone knows is that we are going to die some. Okay. But he'll never think that he is going to die. Okay. So every moment there is death rate, we know, right? In every country, every uh, state has got some death rate. So we know every 8 minutes or 10 minutes one leaves the body, right? But foolish think that they are deathless. So even if somebody dies in the neighbor, right? So they think that okay, so he had some disease and all, so that's the reason he died. But I'll be alive. That's the most wonderful thing in the world. Yeah? So, and then in next, the Lord continues, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tajatye ante kalevaram tam tam evati kaunteya sattad bhavita. So, whatever state, okay. So, yam yam vapi, right? So, this is nothing but whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body. Okay. O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. So, while leaving the body, right? Whatever tajete anta kalevaram is nothing but when we are giving up the body, right? At that time, whatever is our consciousness at that time, right? So we'll get whatever we remember, so we'll get the same body. Okay. A person who actually lives the body, right? Thinking of something, whatever he thinks, right? So he'll get that particular thing. Okay. So here we can see the example of Bharat Maharaj, right? So Bharat Maharaj was actually attached to the deer, right? And then while he was a very pious king, and then the only one distraction was this. So he actually got into this ditch. So where he actually fell thinking of this particular deer, right? And then when the body left, the soul actually left, and then he entered into a deer. But because he was a pure devotee, so the Lord had given him mercy, right? So wherein he could remember his past life, right? And then he actually continued his journey, right? So in the deer, right? So he was never eating lush grass and all. So he was eating only dry grass, and then he was always remembering about the Lord, and then he was actually roaming near the hermitages of sages, right? And the reason he was not eating green grass and then other things is because the moment he eats those things, then unnecessary desires will come into him. So that's the reason. So Bharat Maharaj took that, and then in the next life he was Jada Bharata, right? And then he preached Rahuguna, and then we know that he went, right? So this is the important thing, right? Um, so the general principle is one state of mind at the time of death determines the destination of next life. Okay. So establishes that the transcendental absorption in Krishna's service assures next body into spiritual and not material. Okay. Thinking anything will give the same result. Srila Prabhupada explained that the best process is to chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Right. So that is what, if you keep on doing all these activities in your lifetime, right? So at the time of death, it will not be a difficult thing. Say, what happens is usually, uh, so in one of the lectures I have heard, so wherein, say, a person who is attached to his material opulences and then his businesses and all these things, right? So they actually, if at the time of death they are discussing the same thing with their say hires or say their kids and all, right? What happens is they become an animal in that particular thing, right? So probably a dog or a rat, because dog again safeguards the property, right? The same property will become a dog, and then he'll be actually moving around the same property. Okay, so that's the reason. If you look at the in the old times, right? So nobody was having responsibilities after 60 years, right? So whatever responsibilities they used to have, right? So they used to give to their children, right? So not 60. Once they have attained 50 itself, right? They'll slowly start giving the responsibilities by 55. They'll actually almost get retired, and then by 60 they'll not have anything to manage. Okay. So because it's now the turn of their kids to take up, right? And then, so when you have given away everything, right? So and then they did, even they were distributing also. So whatever was there, right? They used to distribute everything, and then whatever has to be donated to the temple, or if they wanted to construct something, right? So they used to do everything. So by then they were never actually into this entanglements of okay, what will happen? Will my wife get the life insurance? Okay, so will my kids, um, uh, what will my kids get? Who will get the bungalow? Who will get the flat? Right? All these things, dramas, they were never entertaining. So by the time things used to come, and then they were very detached also, right? They were even ready to go to the forest also. So if you look at Bharat Maharaj, right, he left everything. He had everything. So he left everything and then he went, right? So to take the example of Rama also. So when when the king said, his father said that he'll have to live this kingdom, then he left. So he didn't think of all these things, right? What will happen, material things and all. So we are actually bound into this material thing so much so that so we'll not be free at the time of death also, right? So because our lifestyles have changed, right? So but the best thing was by then, so wherein they never had these things. And even if you look in, right, mm, so when a dead body is being carried, right? So when any dead body goes in, right? So what people whosoever put take on the shoulder, right? Soldiers, right? On the shoulder, what they say, Ram Nam Satya hai, right? So when you're leaving the body, nothing is going to come with you. So only the Nama, whatever devotional service you have done, right? That is the thing which you are going to take with you. Rest all is gone. Yeah. So we'll just look in to the next verse. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanushmara yudhya cha maya arpita mano buddhir mamevashyasi asamshayah. So the Lord says that here, Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu, right? So he's saying that, therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me, okay, in the form of Krishna, and at the same time, carry out your prescribed duty of fighting without your activities dedicated, with your the activities dedicated to me, and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. So he's saying that whatever activities you do, right? So in this case, Arjuna is in the battlefield, right? So the Lord says that Ma Manushmarana Yudhyacha. So he says that you actually remember me and fight, right? And then Maya Arpita Manobuddhir. So, and then he says that dedicated your activities towards me by fixing your intelligence. Okay. So that is the important thing. See, the Lord is not saying to stop whatever we are doing in, right? So we'll have to do our prescribed duties. Okay. And then we should actually make the Lord as the center for everything. Okay. So then only things will work. And then, so in that way, right? So this will actually free from the material contamination and engage in our mind in Krishna, right? So we'll have to actually dovetail everything. Say, for example, say if you're going, if you want to go for a trip, right? So instead of going to a materialistic place, right? So where you want to go and enjoy, right? So rather, you should actually dovetail your trip to some pilgrimage. Okay. So in that way, right? So you are not actually confined or getting stuck to the same home or in the same room, right? So you can go out, so but you go into a pilgrimage, right? So because India is the land of devotion, right? So you have so many places, the length and breadth, so wherever you want to go, right? So you can actually go. So that's how we'll have to somehow bring Krishna into our life. Yeah? So whatever we do, right? So if at all, say we love to hear songs, so let's gradually start listening to the bhajans, right? And then you'll enjoy bhajans. So in that way, right? So that is how you can think. So he's saying that you'll have to do your prescribed duty, right? So, and you'll have to fix your mind on me. Okay. So that is the solution which the Lord has given, right? So we all have to carry out our activities by fixing our mind. Abhyasa yoga yuktena chetasa nanya gamina paramam purusham divyam yati parth anu chintayan. So He who meditates on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from path, he, O Partha, is sure to reach me. This is how the Vishnu Dutas will come and then they'll take you, right? So, but for that, we'll have to do abhyasa, right? So, we can take the example of Ajamila also, right? So, what happens? He got the second chance, right? And then see, he practiced, right? So, when Ajamila actually was about to die, right? At that time, he called Narayana. So, he was actually calling his youngest son, right? And then the Vishnu Dutas came and then cut the Yamapash, right? And then people may think that, oh, so he could actually easily attain no, the Supreme Lord, right? So though he did so many sinful activities, so because he was not prepared, the Vishnu Dutas didn't take him. They left him. The only thing they did is he said they actually cut the Yamapash so that he can live and then he can get purified. So after that, he went and then he did a lot of penances, right? And then he prepared himself to go to to actually get liberated, right? So and then go back to Godhead. So he had to do so many things, right? So and then even if you look in the past life also, right? So only in the mid life he was impious. Okay. Earlier also he did so much of pious activities and then he was a very pious boy, right? So unfortunately, so due to one of the disturbing scene which he saw, right? So that actually agitated his mind. Else, so he was a pure soul in the beginning also, right? So that's a different thing. So we shouldn't actually think of that. So that will happen to all of us. It's not the thing, yeah. So importance of remembering Krishna, right? So Lord Krishna actually stresses on the importance of remembering him. How do we remember? By repeating, right? So all the time we'll have to dovetail all our activities, okay? And then, yeah, I think this more or less we covered in, yeah. So, and this section, right? So wherein the Lord actually says that one should meditate upon the Supreme Person as the one who knows everything. Okay, as he is the oldest. Here it said Kavim Puranam. Okay. So he is the oldest. Who is the controller? Who is the smaller than the smallest? Who is the maintainer of everything? Who is beyond all material conception? Who is inconceivable? Okay, and who is always a person. Yeah, he is luminous like the sun, and being transcendental is beyond this material nature. So how should one meditate on the Lord? So that's been mentioned here. Okay, so Kavim in this particular verse is nothing but one who knows everything. We even saw in the seventh chapter, right? So wherein the Lord says that he knows the past, he knows the present, he knows the Vedaham Samatitani, right? So wherein he says that he knows the past, present, and future, right? Because he's untouched, right? He knows everything. And the other thing is Achintya Rupam, right? Inconceivable form. So he has a form, right? So he says that one should actually remember. And then he is the smallest of the small and biggest of the biggest, right? So if you look in, say the bigger planets, right? So he is as a super soul in the bigger planets, and all the planets are moving under his directions, right? And then he's smaller than the smallest. If you see, he is living as a Paramatma in the soul. The soul is what? say 1/10,000 part of our tip of the hair. So he's living in the smallest part of the ant also, right? So that's the thing, right? So that is how we'll have to remember, and then we should remember that he is inconceivable, right? So that's what. So he can do anything, right? He can be smaller than the smallest and bigger than the biggest. And then I'm not sure if you have heard the story, right? So of a cobbler and a brahmana. So if you have heard, if you have not heard, then I'll tell you. And then this is a very small story. Okay, so once Narada actually was passing by, and then he saw a brahmana, and then he saw a cobbler. Okay, so and then say both were doing their respective work. Okay, so as we know, right? So the cobbler, right? Now Narad Muni says that say he asked, so what is going to happen to your next life and all those things, right? So the cobbler was saying that I don't know much. So whatever the Lord decides, it will happen. And then the other person says that the Brahmana says that no, I'll go to the uh, my destination is fixed. Okay. So what happens is uh, Narad Muni goes to Lord Vishnu, and then Lord Vishnu says that you go and tell that to the cobbler, saying that if the cobbler is asking what the Lord is doing, tell him that the Lord is trying to actually push the elephant from the head of the needle. Okay, so there is a and the head of the needle there is a small hole, right? So, and then the Lord is trying to put an elephant or um, a banyan fruit. Okay, and so basically he said elephant only, and then Narad Muni goes and then he says to the cobbler that the same thing. The Lord is actually trying to put the elephant through this needle of the head of the needle, and then the cobbler says that yeah, the God is great, and then he can do anything, right? And then he gives the example of the banyan tree, uh, the where he was sitting. So he says that the banyan fruit is so small, but when it fructifies, it actually becomes such a big tree. So the Lord can do anything. But on the other side, when the Brahmana asked, and then when Narad Muni said that the Lord is trying to do, is actually trying to put the elephant through the needle of the head, and then so the Brahmana laughed and then said that that's not possible. So that is how. So we should never doubt the inconceivable energies of the Lord. Yeah. And then even there is other story also, so which maybe we can take afterwards. I just don't want to take you into too many stories. So we'll actually look into this verse also. Sometime maybe in next classes we'll discuss those things. So this is Kavi and then Puranam, right? So whatever we had, right? So all these things, say he's having a personal form, right? And then this is how we'll have to remember the Lord. So and then he is actually inconceivable, right? And he is luminous, right? Yeah. So this is 8.10. So we'll actually discuss this and then stop here. Yeah. So one who at the time of death fixes his life hair between the eyebrows and by the strength of yoga with an undeviating mind engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord in full deviation, in full devotion, will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay. So this is how if one actually focuses, okay, so like the Gyanis and all, right? So if they can actually focus, and the life air, so because there are different types of airs we went through, right? So there is life air, so there is we actually touch base these things in our Ashtanga Yoga chapter, right? So we will see through. So in this chapter, right, so there are different chakras which are there in the body. There are 6 chakras, okay, and then the life air actually has to be taken up by controlling all the senses, and then we'll have to focus on the Lord. So those details we'll get to know. Okay, so such chakra. So this is what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And then we'll have to concentrate on this. So this is by practice. Okay, so possibly this is not possible for us. So in this day and age, neither we have time to concentrate, focus, and then do all these activities, right? So even this was um, actually refuted by Arjuna, right? Saying that so that's not possible, right? And then in coming verses, he will even say how we actually can focus this, and then how the life air should actually pass. Okay, so it has to actually get uplifted here, 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 and then once it comes to here, right, it will actually open up the skull here, and then the life air should pass. Okay, so that is the verses which we'll see in your next classes. Okay. Uh, Hare Krishna. We'll stop here and then we'll continue next class. Any questions? Okay. If not, we'll wind up. Thank you for your association. Vancha kalpatarobhyascha kripa sindhubhya vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavyo namo namah. Hare Krishna. Mataji, you said something? Sorry.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.